The Unfiltered by Jade.
Jade. Welcome to The Unfiltered by Jade, where we educate, empower, and entertain. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, download, donate, and make everybody know about this.
Beats by RB Records.
Shopping assistance, your style, your budget. Our services include online and local shopping for individuals and businesses, personal shopping, purchasing of company and office supplies, importing and exporting small packages across Jamaica and worldwide, and helping you find unique gifts and items for all events and occasions. Contact us at 876-919-5195 or shoppingassistance2015@gmail.com. Shopping Assistance, your style, your budget.
Welcome back to The Unfiltered by Jade. Today we have with us here Wayne Boyd, and he's here today to speak with us about a topic: should children have a voice? Now, I'm ready to talk about this topic because from the background that I am from, we know how that goes. So he's gonna even give us some more in-depth understanding of that and how it is that we can improve that situation. But before we do that, Wayne is a behavioral technician and he is a Christian and he's a dynamic person we are going to get to understand because, first and foremost, we don't have a lot of men talking about dealing with kids or children. We normally have women doing that. So I'm very happy to have a male here talking about this and sharing his perspective on it. So, hi, Wayne.
Hey Jade,
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Nice. All right, so we're going to jump into it. First of all, I want you to tell us what are some of the misconceptions of children having a voice. And I also want to know the pros and the cons of this.
Some of the misconceptions. Well, first I have to figure out what a voice is, you know? So
Mm-hmm.
having a voice is being able to have influence or make a decision about something.
Mm-hmm.
And what the misconceptions of that from an adult perspective is a child may be being disrespectful or rude. I know that was the number one case for me growing up with my personal life and background.
Mm-hmm.
Kids were seen as rude if they had something to say about a particular situation. So that's one. Also, in my professional life, it plays out in kids not knowing what they want. I feel
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the things I've seen quite often. Adults assume kids don't know what they want or what they're
True.
saying,
Mm-hmm.
which is very troubling actually. But that's a couple of the misconceptions, or even the fact that what they're saying is unimportant.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it holds no value whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
and that in itself, for me as well, very troubling.
But what do you think? And I mean, I'm sorry to cut you, but do you believe that it's because, well, you're children, what do you know? You haven't lived any life as yet, really. So what you know do you think that they take it from that perspective? Why you think that they well, I don't want to use the word degrade, but they don't value the voice of a child.
Yeah, it does come from that perspective, but I think it also negates the fact that children are humans themselves. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever the life they have lived, whether it be 2 years, 10 years, they're living, so they've
Mm-hmm.
experienced something and they have understanding. You know, so I don't think that should be the perspective we take as adults when it comes to dealing with children and hearing what they have to say.
What are some of the pros and the cons of children having voices?
Well, let's start with the cons.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about it, the cons of children having voices is are they it can lead to disrespect in the sense that don't want to follow what an adult has to say any at all. It can lead
Mm-hmm.
to just total neglect of instructions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but most of what I've experienced from a personal and professional life, it's more comes from the responses from adults when they voice their opinions. The child feels undervalued when they don't speak up as much. Is the
Mm-hmm.
con, one of the cons I feel when they do start speaking up. So they speak less. They don't.
That's fine. So they speak less because they're not sure if what they're gonna say is correct, or they're not sure if
Yes,
they're if an adult is gonna hear them what they have
yes,
to say because they have been shunned so much as
yes.
a child. Hmm.
But
Can that from that statement you made, can that lead to low self esteem?
yes, that's where I was able to head with it. Actually,
Okay.
so the pros are they have a better self esteem. They
Okay.
have better self worth. It actually aids in decision making.
Mm-hmm.
Having a voice, you have autonomy and agency.
My
You are less
goodness.
indecisive
Mm-hmm.
when you're given when your thought and your ideas are given actual like
Thought to.
attention. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they're thought about. Also have better understanding of consequences
Yes.
when you have a voice. So if you are allowed to do certain things because you voiced it and you and an outcome is unfavorable, you learn from that and you're like,
Yes.
okay, I can make a better decision moving forward. It
Yes.
helps a lot in decision making.
I agree with that. We spoke about before earlier in terms of being seen and not heard. Has that silenced our children's voice? And is there some good to it?
It definitely has silence. Growing up, back in Jamaica, that's where I've heard it a lot. Not so much being in the States,
Mm-hmm.
but back home, it's being be seen and not heard.
Right.
It definitely has silenced many kids, and I feel like you can see it in my generation growing up, where people are afraid to voice opinions at work or in school. It's
No, 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 no. I understand. It's hard to voice an opinion when you were silenced as a child, not to voice an opinion because you feel like
yes,
you're doing something wrong or you're gonna get in trouble. So that is what follows someone now when they're in the workplace or anywhere at all. You go to church, wherever you go to, and something is happening. Instead of you speaking about it, you don't want to because as a child, when you did that, you got in trouble. So whether they are wrong or right, you always feel like you're gonna get in trouble for what you have to say, or it's not gonna be accepted.
I haven't seen any good from silencing children, and
Okay.
this is now working with children as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
There hasn't been much good from silencing children. In
Uh,
fact, it it is more beneficial for both parties if children were able to voice their opinions and voice it confidently. It would save parents and adults overall much more trouble dealing with kids because now you know what the child wants. Now you know how they feel about a particular situation, and you could avoid maybe a tantrum or some kind of behavior that you wouldn't want out in public. I'd say.
oh, trust me, I agree with that. But how is it that we set boundaries with kids? Because sometimes, as I said earlier, sometimes kids have a voice and no, you know, man, they might embarrass you when you go tell them. I know a lot of things are being said to you. They're not being rude to you because yeah, I can say whatever I want to say to you. How do we now set a boundary with kids and say you can have a voice, but you can have it in this way? How do we do that?
I think firstly, whoever is setting these boundaries, whether it's an institution or at home, there's no like with parents. I think whoever is setting these guidelines or boundaries, they also have to be. They should come from a place or someone who has a good moral standing or grown, who
Yes.
knows good right from wrong in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You can set boundaries in one area, or say I'm at home and I set a boundary for my child, like don't lie
Mm-hmm.
or don't lie to me or you'll face this consequence.
Right.
But my child sees me lying left, right, and center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the kid is going to question so many things. Like you're
Yep.
telling me one thing, and here I'm witnessing you doing it
True.
The opposite of what I'm saying, you know? So I feel
True.
like it has to come from a place where it's practice as well. So kids emulate what they see all the time. And I
Yes.
think if you practice it and you as you preach it, it's a practice what you preach.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I feel you have to definitely start from there. In Proverbs 22:6, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be taken in teaching them good, but it also can show up in ways that aren't ideally seen as good. So, as I said, using the instance of lying or stealing, if you train your child to lie and steal, it is likely the likelihood of them growing up to steal, to be thieves, is higher than if you're training them and teaching them otherwise, you know?
True. Mm-hmm.
It's not just from a that verse is not from a positive point only, it can be just taken across the board.
True.
How do we set those boundaries? So we set the boundaries by first practicing them ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
What I would
Good
say.
point. Good point.
So you can also explain the nature of a adult child relationship and what that looks like
Entails. Mm-hmm.
in what setting. So if you can explain to the because children understand quite well, you know. We might think that they don't have a good understanding of things, but they're very perceptive and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start by explaining what the relationship between you and the child should be, and also respecting their opinions, I feel that's how we go about addressing, giving them a voice, but also setting boundaries.
So, who is it that should set these boundaries for these kids?
If you're fortunate as a kid or have the privilege, you spend most of your time between home and school because you know there are kids who don't have the opportunity to go to school or are in school. Majority of the responsibility falls on parents and
Mm-hmm.
I feel teachers and administrators at school. That is where most of the weight falls on who should teach them to have a voice and how to use their voice. But I feel like if you are blessed to work with kids or be around kids in any capacity, you have some weight in that as well. You know, you have some say or some they can kids learn from everywhere. It's not
Right.
just you know, so they learn from their friends. They can learn from literally anything they see. It can be things they watch. So, but most of the time is spent school and home. So it falls firstly on the parents because kids start to develop literally from birth.
Right.
That's when most of the development happens. Development happens, and a lot of it happens between 8 months and 24 months old. You know, so they start to learn verbal cues. They start to assert themselves when they're closer to the age of 2. They start, you know, they might pout about that decision you made and they realize, oh, I don't really want to do what mommy says. But they pick up a lot of those things.
Actually, I think I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna jump in and say I think that they start learning little stuff from they come outside that womb, or even in the womb.
Yeah, that is very true. Again, so the
Mhm.
development of children is literally from
From
the moment.
yes, yep, oh yeah, yeah. It should start at home, really.
Yes.
Boundaries with kids really should start at home. And I was gonna ask a follow up question was how do you teach your children the boundaries and how to have a voice at home and at school? And that question is asked because some people say, all right, you can have a voice at home if you don't feel a way if you feel a particular way about this issue, talk about it. If it is that you don't like something, say something. It has to be said this particular way. When you're at school, it doesn't necessarily lead or call for that, because if you're at school and you don't like to do maths, you're gonna have to do maths whether you like it or not, because you're at school. So you cannot say to a teacher, I'm not doing maths because I don't like it. So thing you can say that at home to your parents, I don't want to do maths, I don't like it, and they say yes, so you have to do it, and they explain to you. When you go to school, teachers don't necessarily sit down with you and explain to you why you have to do maths, why you have
Yeah.
to like it, or why whether you like it or not, it has to be done. So how do you give that transition of okay, you can be at home and be vocal and say how you feel when you're at school, you can't necessarily do that. But if you're gonna do it in a respectful way and you teach them how to do it there, how can that be done?
I would say that that falls on the parent
Okay.
because in school it's not just you. You might, as a child, you might be an only child, or you might be a child with even 4, 5 other siblings,
Mm-hmm.
which your parents may have more time or parent, depending on the household that you're in.
Right.
may have more time to sit down with you and talk to you about certain things. In school, it's a bit different because it's literally from like 15 kids upwards, so sometimes 40 kids, depending on where you are going to school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it starts from home. The parent letting the child know, like, okay, you have this voice here at home, and not to take away from your voice when you go to school. However, the school setting is much different from home. Again, it all comes back down to the parent or the adult in charge explaining again and trying to get the kid to understand what setting they're in.
Right.
So if I'm at home with my child and they're voicing a complaint about a specific situation, say we go to the math thing. Oh, I don't like math. At home, I'm like, okay, we can negotiate something. We can do like 10 minutes of math, and we get to do something else for a bit, or we get the 20 minutes of math and we do something that you may like. In school, you
Okay.
don't have that
No, you
leeway, that
don't. Mm-mm.
that flexibility at all. So that's where your parent is like, okay, I get that you don't like math. I'm going to use Tommy as my figurative kid because I like the name Tommy for some reason.
Sure.
So Tommy, you don't get to do math. Like, you don't like math, and I understand that. But in school, there's less flexibility with whether you can do math or how long you can do math for. You'll have math for this set time, and this is what has to be done. And from there, you tell them why we're in school and what school is for, and just understanding even the teacher's perspective. The teacher has to deal with not just you, but 20 other kids, 15 other kids. So they might not have the time to hear you out as intently as I do. And I feel like that falls on the parent specifically to explain those dynamics.
I understand that, but I'm gonna throw something at you. I'm the child and I'm trying to figure out, okay, so why do I have a voice at home but I can't have a voice at school? Why is it that if I'm home and I say to you I don't like maths and you say we can do it for 20 minutes and then I do something I like, why can't I do that at school? Because I feel like you're taking away my voice when I'm at school. I feel like they're taking away my voice from me and I'm not being heard because I don't like something. So I'm gonna go to school and when it's maths class, I'm gonna tell them when I'm home they don't let me do maths for an hour. I only do maths for 30 minutes because they know I don't like it. So I don't want to do maths for an hour here.
That is a tricky, that's a very tricky one, because you do have kids who will stand on that, and that's good that they have that agency and that autonomy to speak up for themselves, and you don't want to take that from them, especially in the early stages. Um,
Yeah, but how is that dealt with though?
how how is that dealt with? That
Hmm.
is one maybe brought up in, I can't even say that because again, not everyone is privileged. I mean, like, you can send your kid to a smaller, you can homeschool them, but again, no one has that privilege. Not
Exactly.
everyone has that privilege
Hmm.
to homeschool kids. Um, in a public setting,
I don't know how that can work. And I'm going to say that wait, I'm not even going to discredit anybody out there. If you think it can work, fine. But I'm not seeing how that basically can work because if I say to my child, you don't like maths, all right, do 30 minutes here and then we do Spanish. I'm just throwing out something. What are the odds? You like Spanish. God go with you. You can do that afterwards. But when you're at school, you don't have that option to do it. There's no option. So at school, you really don't have that kind of voice at school. But you can have it at home. So I would suggest um saying, okay, when you're at home, you don't like something, it's something that you have to do and explain to them why they have to do it. Because sometimes when it is that we say, all right, you can do 20 minutes of this now. And then you go to school, they ain't going to tell you you can do 20 minutes of it. So is it also that we're given false, is it hope? I don't know if I'm using the right words. Is it that we are kind of also, as parents, giving false narrative to kids that when they go out, they expect the same thing that's happened at home? And I'm not saying that's what you're doing or that's what majority persons are doing. But the truth is, sometimes a con of it is when it is that we give that false hope to them, they go to other places and want that same thing, which does not happen in the real world.
you do shelter your children some bit from the world
Hmm.
when you're at home. I will admit that.
Yes,
And parent, I mean, what parent doesn't want to kind of make their child's life easy in a sense, or
exactly.
you
Hmm.
know? So that's kind of it is a tricky thing at being a parent and trying to navigate the harsh realities of the world, and being at home and being like, okay, I'm your parent, and we can work around some things.
Right.
Navigating that can be really difficult. You could show them the harsh realities at home, but then your child might resent you in some sense. Your child might think, okay, this should have been my safe space. Why do I feel
Why is
like
it like this? Mm-hmm.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
and
So it's
it's
just
so
really how you do it.
yeah, it really is how you do it. Each individual is different, hence the word individual. But surroundings are different. Their upbringing is different. So you tailor it to your kid and
Yes.
how the world is around them. As you would know, being in Jamaica is much different than being abroad.
Oh
You
yes.
can see the differences, like the
Oh
stark
yeah.
differences, even with children.
Mm-hmm.
The things that I see happen in public with children and parents, if I saw that happening in majority of areas in Jamaica, I'm pretty sure the child would be getting some bruising somewhere else.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, Not that I'm advocating for hitting children, but
Right.
I'm just
Right.
saying that the
There's
differences are
difference. The
so
disciplining and everything is different. Everything is
so much
different.
different.
Mm-hmm.
But you want your child. I would assume you would want your child to feel safe in your presence and around you,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to voice your concerns at home does that.
Mm-hmm.
It it translates to school differently. You may not be able to do the things at home. I mean, at school as you do at home. But if you understand your parent and your parent lays it out before you, I'd hope as a child you can be like, okay, I have to do this because this is the reason I'm going to school. This is what my parents say I'm going to school for. I don't like it, but they say I have to do it. It can help sometimes with reward systems,
I
like
was just gonna say that. Yep.
so like at home, if it can be like, okay, I was in the math class, I hated it, because your children can express their emotions for like we feel certain ways about things and we still do them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can be rewarding in some sense for it at home, not to say just give them to them all the time. Eventually you can pull away the reward system and they're just doing it automatically. um but
Even praising them for what they do in
yeah,
terms of good job, and it can also be used as an incentive to actually want to do the work at school, and it can mirror that. So if they're at home and I'm going to use your system, the 20 minutes for maths and whatever else you like to do
yeah,
afterwards, giving them that, and they don't have to be at home buggered on, oh my god, I'm gonna have to do this once. You get in a 20 minutes, they look forward to doing something that they like. It may actually push them to just do what they need to do at school, because they know that when they come home they're safe to do what they like in a comfortable space.
that is very true. That's also part of what I do for work, with with children. It's
Nice.
reward systems are very effective in kids
Yes.
learning what we'd call positive behavior sometimes,
Yes.
or what people would call positive behavior.
Hmm.
But yeah, so a reward system, a praise system, even a little star. Sometimes you see a star and you light up as a picnic, as a
Of
child.
course. I
So
want
yeah,
to start as an adult and light up myself. Of
so
course.
sometimes even just singing praises, not even giving something, was like, oh yo, and just high praises really
Yep.
will do it for you.
Yep. Yep. I agree with that. Wayne, can parents sometimes be considered bullies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is not even from any, this is strictly from my life. Absolutely. 100%.
Wayne.
100%.
Okay, so my husband and I were having this conversation in terms of bullies. So bullies take away people's voice. Parents who sometimes don't want to listen to their kids are bullies in terms of, and when I say that, I will see it as you're bully. You're being a bully because your child is trying to speak to you, and I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear what you're saying. You're a child. You're not supposed to whatever. Instead of hearing what the child has to say, because children's points of view are valid.
Yes.
And once you take away their voice, you take away who they are, you take away what they can say, and you become a bully to them. And this is why children don't. Why am I answering a question? I mean,
I feel like that's some experience from yourself as well. Maybe, I don't know. But yes, well, Firstly, I want to say when you did say if parents can be bullies, I meant not in the taking away a voice, which is a way bullies operate as well. I meant straight up bullying, like, oh, psychological bullying.
No,
But
but it's the same thing. Actually,
yes,
it is the same thing. Psychologically, it is the same thing. When a parent, so taking away somebody's voice affects them first mentally.
yes,
Psychologically, it affects them. You are psychologically harming your child by not even wanting to hear what they have to say. And this is why it's so dangerous sometimes, because when now something happens to a child, the child is afraid to come to you as a parent to say, hey, this happened to me, because they're afraid that you're going to bully them or put them down or have something negative to say about them. And you're going to shut them up and you're not going to believe them. And all these negatives are attached to you as the parent. Not that a parent is a negative thing, but the child feels that what they're going to get from the parents is negative. So they don't go to them. And that's bullying.
I 100% agree. Because when things do happen, if you've been silenced or not able to speak on things, just generally, when things do happen to children, it happens quite a lot where they don't share with parents or maybe even any adult, because it can translate not only from parents, they're like, oh, adults don't listen to children, and they don't open up, and kids can be subjected to some horrific things sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
they sit with that, which is a horrible thing. But yes, parents can be bullies by not taking heed to what their children are saying. And I know as a parent, sometimes life is hectic on your like you live your own life. I feel like growing up sometimes as a child, I thought my parent was just my parent, and they don't really deal with anything else or have anything else doing,
Mm.
and that is selfish in itself. As a child, children
That's
can be very
far
selfish.
from the truth. Mm-hmm.
Yes, children can be selfish in that way,
Oh, yeah.
but you are the adult. Your brain is hopefully fully developed at the stage you have the child.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it's like being a child, and you might have even experienced, because a lot of that translates from also your parent, or the parent's parent, not listening to them, so they just operate in that same sense.
Right.
But if they just go back and think on those moments where it happened to them and how they felt, and just slow down and be mindful toward and list actually have the sense that what my child is saying is important. Even sometimes it might be something very silly. If you operate in that space all the time, like, okay, my child is saying something, it's important. I need to be attentive. I need to be present and mindful.
That
Sit.
can be helpful for them. That
Yes,
alone they need to know, so that they can know that they're safe and they're comfortable.
yes,
Fine. We have to give that present or concrete knowledge to kids, so that they can know we are here for you. You can come and speak to us. You can have a voice. I normally say to persons, have a voice. Teach kids to have a voice with respect.
yes,
Not just have a voice, but have a voice with respect. And just like how we're telling them to have a voice with respect, when we are as adults are voicing our opinions, is to do it with respect. So that also means don't shout at them,
hmm,
because if you shout at kids, you're not respecting them.
that is true.
Nobody wants to be shouted at, whether they're
Nobody.
kids or not. How you say things, because voice and how we say things with our voice and with our body language makes a difference.
That is true. Body language.
Body language speaks a lot, and and how we say things with our tone makes a difference. Our tone alone can frighten them or can make them want to talk to us. So it's really dependent on how we use our communication styles with them. That shows them how to properly use their voice, and use their voice well, and use their voice to allow people to listen, because nobody wants to listen to somebody who's shouting all the time. No one wants to listen to somebody who's demeaning all the time. So use your voice in an appropriate way.
That is very true. And sometimes what we tell at work, like how we tell our co-workers or even adults, how do you speak to other adults? You don't go around just shouting at other adults.
Precisely.
Treat your children some how you treat adults sometimes. I feel
Yes.
like that's the thing. We see our other adults as adults and humans, and then we're like, oh, they're just kids. They they don't have their own feelings, thoughts, and emotions, so we just deal with them anyway.
Right.
So sometimes being as simplistic as that, as breaking it down, talk to them sometimes like how you talk to an adult.
Yes.
Have the same respect for them like you would have another adult at work, or even your boss or your manager.
Right. Right. And that would help teaching them, because sometimes we don't have to talk to teach, we have to show sometimes.
That is true.
So Wayne, we're at the end of our conversation, but I want you to tell parents out there or encourage persons out there who don't normally value their children having a voice why it's so beneficial.
I'd encourage parents who don't think it's beneficial for kids to have a voice
Mm-hmm.
to think about how they feel when they are not being heard. First and
Mercy.
foremost.
No, sir. What happened?
In your adult life, whatever your situation is, there must be a moment that has arisen where you don't feel heard, and how do you think that, and how that played out for you and your emotions. And we have to remember that the children's brains are underdeveloped. They're not fully developed as ours as adults, so they may take that, and it might be more exponential in terms of emotions and outcomes and feelings.
I
So
like
that's
that.
that's my first thing I'd say. Second thing I'd say is I would hope any parent listening would want better for their kids in any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd want your kid to be confident in what they're saying. You want your kid to be bold. You'd want your kid to strive for the best. They can't do that if their self-esteem is low or
True.
their self-worth is low. That is not something they can do with low self-esteem and self-worth.
True.
So that would be my encouragement to parents.
Nice. Thank you so much, Wayne. This was a great discussion. And I'm sure and I'm hoping that parents out there are listening and giving their children voices or allowing them to speak and to have their voice. And I'm hoping that parents also show the kids by actions and by words how to use the voice that they have, so even advocate for themselves. Because we have to teach kids from their young
We
how to
do.
do that, else they will grow up and don't know how to do so at all. Don't know how to defend themselves, don't know how to speak up for themselves. And we don't want to have kids who are always dependent on adults to fight their battles or to talk for them.
That is very
Because
true.
be assertive. We need to put that in our kids, but we need to do that and instill that in them by showing them how it's done. Be role models, be examples for our kids. So I'm gonna leave that with you all.
Yes.
So thank you so much again, Wayne, for sharing. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm very sure also the listeners have enjoyed this conversation also.
It was great being here, Jade. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem, Wayne. And thank you so much again, everyone, for listening to The Unfiltered by Jade. We'll be back next week. Thank you.
Bam bam bide, bam bam bide, badu bidi bam bam bide, bam bam.